So welcome everyone. My name is Osagi Obasagi. I'm a professor here in the School of Public Health and Law School. I'm also with the Othering and Belonging Institute, and we are here to celebrate the publication of this brand new book by DeVone, Boggan, and Jason Corburn, Advancing Peace. Jason is a professor here in the School of Public Health and in urban planning. And DeVone is the executive director of Advancing Peace, organization here in the Bay Area, looking to engage in incredible work on stopping gun violence. So for the program today, we're just going to turn things over to the two authors, and they're going to share a few thoughts about their work, and then we'll open things up to questions from the audience.
Oh, that's right. Good evening.
Good evening.
How are you?
Are we good? Yeah, we're good. Yeah, we're good. We're good. Well, let me say I'm DeVone. That's Jason, if you didn't know. And I want to first thank you for being here. It's really nice to see everyone. And I guess I presume you're here because you have either read the book, you plan on reading the book, which means you're going to purchase the book, or you support the work. Or you may even be a critic of the work, and I welcome that. I know Jason does, but I welcome that as well. One of the reasons I know that both Jason and I had in mind for writing the book was really to better inform people, both folks who have an appreciation for the work that we do, and those who are still trying to figure it out, and even those who are adamantly opposed to it. And as we discuss those things, you'll better appreciate where I'm coming from if you don't already. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. But you gave me a great pause because there was something else I wanted to do before I jumped in, and I just jumped in. There are folks in this room that mean an awful lot to me, and rather than wait to the end to make that case, I want to make it now. The first group of folks that I'd like to just really quickly acknowledge are the folks that are in the room that facilitate this amazing work in some of the most dangerous theaters in the country, who are committed to engaging individuals, seeing their humanity, and committed to helping them to live their best life, change, and show up in their divine selves. I just like for those folks to just stand up really quickly. And so, Freddie, don't sit down because I'm recognizing folks who facilitate this work. Sam's in the room, Rod's in the room. These guys have been doing amazing work. Khalid's in the room. Yeah, he ain't in no dangerous situations though. He sits upstairs with me. But they do an amazing body of work, and hopefully you'll get a chance to meet them and speak with them and learn more about what that day-to-day is like in an active theater where gun conflict is happening day in and day out, and the kinds of things they do to help those who are at the center of it resolve it without gunfire, and the journey of taking their lives to a better, more healthy place. Other folks in the room that I would be crazy if I just didn't acknowledge that my mother and father are in the room. Mom, Dad, would you just show your hands? Very, very important for obvious reasons. I'm standing before you because they decided to let me come into the world. So, and then finally, but not lastly, my wife, Narissa, if you would say good day. I'm a workaholic. I'm a perfectionist. I'm a control freak. And if any of you resemble that, you know what that's like. If you live with somebody that's that, you know what that's like. It can't be always happy. So I'm appreciative that my wife stands with me and gives me the continual nudge to keep it 100 in the work. Quickly, the book, you know, we wrote it, we wanted to show and share an important body of work. We wanted to communicate that there is a variety of mental models that we must become more informed of and by that can help us to make gun violence rare and non-recurring in the cities most impacted by gun violence. And when I say there are a variety of mental models, there's more than one. And I say more than one because the one that we tend to continue to grab a hold of is law enforcement. Now, I'm not going to stand before you and say that law enforcement doesn't have a place or a role, but the data will tell you when it comes to helping cities better resolve gun violence, the data says it's a lukewarm approach. And I think I'm being nice. Whereas work like Advance Peace and others doing similar work in the community violence intervention space is demonstrating time and time and time again that we can reduce this kind of gun violence precipitously, dramatically, and sustain it over a long period of time. When I showed up in Richmond in 2005, 2006, it was a city literally on fire. 50 firearm-related homicides. How many of you know of Richmond? Everybody in the room? So you know it's a relatively small city. More than 350 non-fatal shootings a year where bullets were in bodies, right? And over time, particularly and specifically after the first Peacemaker Fellowship cohort, we'll talk more about that, we began to see deep reductions that have now been sustained for several years. And Sam now runs the Office of Violence Prevention that I helped to stand up and served as its director from 2007 and 2016. And he's doing amazing work, and the body of work has grown under his leadership. But we wanted folks to know that story. We wanted folks to see it and understand it because we know and appreciate that it's folks like you around the world that must be informed and who can inform policymakers about the need to do the work. Now, let me bag up just a bit because you won't understand perhaps or even appreciate where we're going and what we're trying to do with the book if I don't give you at least 4 things to think about that I think the book communicates, but I want to be crystal here. 4 things I learned in Richmond and what I've learned in 15 additional cities around the country in doing this work. 1, in cities where gun violence has a significant impact and seems to be a historical boom, 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 boom. A relatively small group of people at the center of that gun violence, driving that gun violence. So for example, in the city of Richmond, I was told when I got there that if you don't engage 300, 400 individuals who law enforcement, and I'm talking law enforcement broadly, and other community folks thought were at the center of this violence, you'll never gain any traction in reducing it. Well, we learned within a 24-month period, it was less than 30 people driving 70% of that gun violence. Those 50 homicides, those more than 350 shootings with an injury, less than 30 people driving that gun violence. 1. 2, those people rarely are going to be prosecuted for their suspected acts of gun violence. So in that number in Richmond, but same numbers, relatively speaking, in a place like Chicago that everybody talks about, or New Orleans. Small group of people, the people thought to be at the center of this gun violence, rarely going to be prosecuted for their suspected acts of gun violence. The clearance rate, the average clearance rate or closure rate, prosecution rate for retaliatory gun violence in this country right now is a little below 50%. So 5 out of 10 people, and that number's gotten better over the years. It was under 40% when I started in Richmond. In Richmond, it was under 20%, right? For firearm offenses that deliver an injury and not death, that clearance rate is under 40% nationally. In Richmond, it was under 12% when I got there, right? In Chicago today, it's under 12%. So think about that. Rarely are these prosecuted. What does that mean when you think about the persons at the center of gunfire? That means that they remain in those very communities where they've perpetrated firearm activity, still at the center of gunfire. The next thing I learned, which blew my wig back, so much so that I no longer have a wig, is that rarely, and we note in the book, I think 16% of these individuals are being engaged by any public or community-based system of care. So we're trying to reduce gunfire. We invest goo gobs of resources to reduce gunfire, and the resources that we are investing rarely meet or reach the individuals at the center of gunfire. And there are people and organizations that believe they're engaging folks at the center of gun violence based on, well, his pants are sagging. He wears dreads. He got gold teeth in his mouth. He wears his cap sideways. He talks shit. He raps. He's got a hoodie on. Or we caught him holding a gun. You know, many kids are carrying guns with no intention of shooting those guns because they think that carrying a gun is going to keep them safe. And then they get arrested for carrying that gun, and now they're labeled as a gang member. Their whole lives are changed as a result of feeling unsafe and feeling as if I need to carry a gun to be safe. Much like many, 70% of legal gun owners will tell you they carry a gun. Why? It makes me feel safe. So we're arresting a whole lot of young people, black and brown young people, for carrying guns. And it's a sad reality that they can get that gun quicker than they can get a textbook. Simply to feel like I'm safe, right? And a lot of those individuals are caught up as being termed or deemed at the center of gun violence. They're not. But a lot of resources will reach them. And I'm not saying that's not good work, necessary work, if it helps them to feel safe. But it's not reaching the individuals that it needs to reach, those who create the environment that makes those young men and women feel unsafe. So it became very clear that, wow, no one's engaging these individuals. And then finally, you begin to learn that if no one in the ecosystem is actively or proactively engaging these individuals, then rarely is the capacity available within the ecosystem to engage this particular group of individuals in such a way that delivers an optimal outcome for the individual and for the broader community, right? And what do I mean? Because I can see some of your faces. This population is a tough population. I want you to imagine something. Just go with me here for a second. My dad's going to cringe when I do it. He's seen me do it before. But I'm a cat that Freddie might approach in terms of trying to give me some good advice about living. He's the service provider per se. And that's what I mean by capacity. And my response is, get the motherfucking shit out of my face. All that pee shit, fuck that shit. And you come out here tomorrow and you gonna catch a bullet. Now think about the service provider who's on the back end of that, not used to that, not prepared for that. And what you get is, I'm in an anger management program because someone has convinced me that I got anger management issues. And I show up to the service provider and they kick me out of the program. Why? Because I got fucking angry. Or I'm in a substance use disorder program and they tell me, it's great that you want to get some help, but come back when you're not high. Do you think I'm coming back? It happens in a very cyclical over and over and over way. Because sometimes it's easier to do that than to deal with, get the fuck out of my face, motherfucker. Which is simply, please don't get out of my face. Please see through that. Understand my pain, understand my trauma, and understand that I'm really, really interested in having someone stick by me through whatever journey is going to be necessary to get me to the other side. And we talk about this in the book in terms of 71%, I believe, of the individuals that we've enrolled into this fellowship are interested in changing their lives. They just often don't. And I'm talking about cats committed to carrying that gun, committed to using that gun if they feel it's necessary, are interested in changing their lives. Or i.e., I don't want to live like this, but I feel like I have to live like this. And the only thing I got coming at me is law enforcement. And even with increased law enforcement attention, it's not slowing me down. And that's what I want you to hear. Even with increased law enforcement attention, because the obvious question is, why isn't a habitual active firearm offender in jail? Because they're not. And perhaps they don't deserve someone to chase them with love, court them with humanity, and cater to them with great expectation for living a long life. But don't the communities most impacted by them deserve for them to get that if that changes their lives? Well, that is what we're trying to communicate in this book, alongside of the work saving cities millions, hundreds of millions of dollars. Every time a neighborhood change agent or violence interrupter jumps in between a potential rival shootout, that shootout could end up with several injuries, several deaths, etc. Well, Jason and his team here have helped us to begin to capture data that translates into how many times have we done that, and what would it have cost the city or the taxpayer if we hadn't done that. So again, a lot of information, but what we were trying to accomplish, well, one of the things we were trying to accomplish was writing the book. I'm looking at Jason, he's got this look on his face like, okay, give me the mic.
No, I should have known, never follow DeVone. This is my first mistake. I should have gone first because he just said everything that I had already prepared my remarks, and now I got to figure something out. But I also want to just thank DeVone for inviting me to take this journey with him to write this book. We talked about it a lot. We talked about it with Khalid, with Sam, with Rod, with folks. Freddie are in this room who are really the folks who DeVone said are really leading this. And I learned so much from them, and James and Maurice and Julian and folks who aren't here, riding along with them, being in the neighborhoods, being with them. And so thank you for that. I also want to thank some other people who DeVone didn't shout out. David, who helped us gather some of that data and worked with us for a long time. Professor Mahassan, who's also one of our researchers, gathering this data, putting it out there. Part of what we're doing is trying to tell stories of the work, but also the impacts. And there's lots of ways that we need to do that with data, with crime data, with people's stories, with some of the evidence that DeVone referenced. And I also need to recognize the most important person for me in the room, my wife Judea, who's here and has put up with me for many, many hours of not being around and taking writing retreats with this guy. A few things I wanted to add to what DeVone said. Most of what he said I was going to say too, but we're here in this room, and this book really is trying to take, as he said, a different approach to this work, which is starting from a public health approach, not a law enforcement approach. Starting from an approach of seeing the humanity even in folks who have been defined by their worst act. And we don't want that to be their only definition of who they are. And so what does that mean? What does that mean in practice? Well, Sam and Rod and Freddie could tell you what they do on a regular basis to take a public health approach. It's not often what we talk about in the School of Public Health. Is definitely not what we talk about in hospitals and healthcare. That's important. But what we're trying to say is we need to get out front, like before you get sick. What do we need to do? We need to provide the conditions, the supports, the services, the love, the social connections, what we've come to call the triple A, the always available adult in somebody's life, that parent that doesn't exist, that friend, that social connection, to really help people find their path and heal and find those services or be helped along the way on that journey. It's not easy work, as DeVone said, and as folks in this room will attest to. Mahassan and I were just looking at data recently where what we see across all the participants, called fellows, as you read about in this book, what was the number? I wrote it down. 77% of the participants in the Advanced Peace program have 4 or more adverse childhood experiences. These are those traumas, abuse, neglect that we hope no one experiences. But 77% have 4 or more. Over 30% have 7 or more. So imagine how hard it is to engage with folks who have experienced that and not had any of those healthy adults or healthy supports or school-based programs or all the other things. And that's what we talk about in the book. And the guys in this room and women who do this work, I should also recognize Jasmine De La Fosse, who's from Stockton, who we want to send some love and some healing to. She was shot in the leg, is that right, Rod? 2 times in the leg on Saturday in Stockton at that mass shooting. She's an outreach worker extraordinaire for us in Stockton. AP. Yeah. Advanced Peace Family. Thank you, Rod. So we're sending her some love and some healing energy. And let me just read quickly, and then I think we want to open it up to your questions. What does this look like from an outreach worker's perspective? This is in the book from MAK, also known as Marcus. Mark, I'm not sure what else he goes by these days, but maybe Freddie or Khalid can tell me. Need my glasses for this one. So he says, so what does it take to be a healer in the streets, an outreach worker, a violence interrupter, a credible messenger, a wounded healer? He says, you have to understand that your job, one of them, is to change the mentality that leads to destructive behavior and community harm and trauma. You have to challenge the toxic street code. You have to promote positivity, social activity, and encourage those social norms. You have to be a beast in the streets. But if you aren't doing these things at a high level for yourself, you'll never be as effective as you can possibly be. Most fellows we're dealing with aren't psychopaths. They aren't running around killing everyone for no reason. We are all traumatized out here, but not totally out there, you feel me? We're trying to get to him before anything goes down. We keep getting at him, calling him every day. He still ain't ready, but I'm not giving up. They know we're coming for them. The mentality and message is, if I can change from being that person, I'm living proof. So you, little homie, can do it too. Then we got action. I believe in you. I got to keep on being the best man I can possibly be. Positive, so that dudes will see what you do and who you say you are. They look at you and who you are and say, I want to do what you do. How do I become that? And I think for me, that's the spirit of centering the voices of the folks who are doing this incredibly hard work. Part of the inspiration for me, and I think also maybe for DeVone, of writing this book was those voices, those experiences, that everyday work that folks in this room and that we talk about in the book do to make this happen. We're not being heard. So I hope you engage in listening to their voices and not just the data, the crime statistics and stuff like that. Last thing I want to say is, as I've learned and as I think you'll hear in the book, is the people who really are the stars are the fellows, the participants, the folks who are highly traumatized, who in many cases find a way to turn their life around. And let me just say, I looked this morning at our database, and advanced peace across all of how many cities is it? About 12, 13 or so cities, I think, where we're collecting data, has touched over 2,000 folks in the Peacemaker Fellowship to date. Over 2,000 people. And as DeVone said, many of those folks are turning away from violence and not pulling a trigger, not injuring someone. And the savings to families, to lives, to reduce trauma for entire communities is immeasurable. But even if we were to measure those violence interruptions, as DeVone said, and we're trying to do that because that's what policymakers and decision makers want to hear, we can put a number on that. So if we took those 2,000 folks and the violence interruptions that folks like Sam and James and Rod and Freddie and others have done out in the streets, to date, 934 conflicts where guns were present were interrupted and avoided by advanced peace practitioners, translating to somewhere between $934 and $467 million saved by one small organization in 6 or 7 years. So significant impact. Just say the last thing, and the thing I've been as moved by from the outreach workers, these street healers, these street clinicians, as I call them, as the fellows, the participants. And I just want to read a little quote from Eric, a former fellow in Richmond, who's really had an amazing experience of getting an internship in Washington, D.C., and going off to college and starting a family and doing a whole bunch of other things more than I even know that Sam can talk about. But I spent a lot of time talking with him and interviewing him. And let me read you just one quote that I think really kind of captures for me the spirit of this work and the book and what Advanced Peace is all about. Eric says, "I was angry. I had been shot. I had lost friends. I was stuck in the hood, worrying about some damn killing being self-destructive. ONS, Office of Neighborhood Safety, stepped in and opened me up to other opportunities. I'd likely be in jail or dead by now. It's 2023 and I'm alive. There's more to do, still taking steps, getting there. You need someone to walk with you and kickstart that journey. That's what the Peacemaker Fellowship does. They walked with me. They held me. They caught me before I could fall too far. And you know, they still with me. As a father, I'm taking all of that love they showed me and they showered on me and giving it to my kid now. I ain't going to let them fall too far. And if they do, I'm right there to pick them up, hug them, and get them going again. That's family. That's what Advanced Peace showed me." So for me, that's what Advanced Peace, I think, showed me, and that's what I hope Advancing Peace, the book, shows you about how really putting this practice of love into public policy. Thanks.
what's next.
I don't know. Questions? Yeah, if you have a question, raise your hand, and we're just going to ask you to just say your name, and then we're going to repeat the question because I guess the video can't hear it. So it's not that we didn't hear you. Yeah, sir.
First, an appreciation of both of you because your labor of love, I can't wait to read it. I can't wait to check it out. And then thank you to all of the peacemakers. Thank you for your work. My name is Dr. Cesar Cruz. I run an organization in Oakland called Homies Empowerment. And I'm going to ask a complicated question that I don't think we have an answer for. And it's not a question to the two of you, but maybe it's a question to all of us. And I need 1 minute just to preface it so that we're on the same page. In my neighborhood in Oakland, we have East Oakland, we have West Oakland, and we have North Oakland, but there's no South Oakland. You can't have that on a map, but geographically, there's no South Oakland. South Oakland is a geographic area where a lot of guns come in and a lot of cocaine comes in. And I've been at this for 31 years and 16 with Homies Empowerment. And when I met the reporter Joe Vasquez, who's now retired, he said, you know, I really want to be reporting about other things, but violence is actually really useful. It has gotten my kids through school. Violence is actually a big business, and it builds universities. It builds professorships. It builds syllabuses. It builds emergency rooms. Police appreciate it. Coroner's offices love it. Churches love it. Rosary shops love it. Roses places, t-shirt companies, you name it. And so there is no universal appeal to stop the violence at all because it makes money. It even funds a Homies Empowerment, and it funds an Advanced Peace and other organizations, and some that don't do a whole lot of anything. And a lot of the analysis that I heard is about a toxic street code, about some of the most dangerous cities. But I think what I've been learning is that this is a setup. Like if we were to get in a helicopter and sort of kind of look at East Oakland and look at liquor store, fast food, church, liquor store, fast food, church, proliferation of Smith & Wesson guns and other things coming in. And sometimes we're barking up the wrong tree, not understanding there's a global movement to sell violence. And oftentimes, not you, I don't know you as a professor, but I've met a lot of professors that they didn't set out to do this, but they're in the business of poverty and street porn. And they make money and they get rich off of a data analysis that continues to perpetuate things. And so this is not a question for you or for you, but for us, how might we no longer participate in that system that hyper-focuses the 30 on the block and has no critical analysis of how useful violence is? Because I can buy prisoners on the stock market. I can have a private prison. There's so much money to be made off of our bodies. And so that's what I want to complicate this evening, because I'm tired of the quick fixes. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked the question. Yeah, thanks for that. And so I appreciate it and agree with a lot of what you have said. And you're right, this is a question that probably won't get answered tonight, and there are probably a gazillion ideas about what the answers may be. Let me tell you about what this is about for me. Because when I got to the city of Richmond, that's what came at me. And I appreciated it. But it was about, how do I get cats to stop falling for that setup? And that's what this work is, I believe, about for us folks doing the work and at the center of work. Because there is a greater evil, a greater system out there that perpetuates, as this brother said, this setup. And my answer to it is, somebody needs to do something. They got to roll. I got to roll. My team's got to roll. Our fellows got to roll. My role is to get into the minds of as many of these cats at the center of that setup and try to help them to stop falling for the setup. Because at the end of the day, I don't have any confidence that the setup is going to stop. I think the setup is going to continue. And I do think that there are things that we should be doing or could be doing simultaneously, i.e., what we do on these streets to inoculate as many of these cats as we can, and things that we should be doing to interrupt the setup, the system. There are things that we probably should, lots of things that we probably should be doing. But I can tell you from experience, my experience, I didn't have time to think about that bigger question. Because people were dying right in front of me. And not that I didn't want and don't want that larger question answered, because it's an important question. It's a real question, and there is an answer. I don't know that I have the answer, but I know that for me and for this work, it was about how do we stop people from dying right now? As many as we can, as fast as we can, right now. Because trust me, when I got into the city of Richmond, there were a whole lot of people that said this office and this work should focus on that. Well, that's a Titanic. It's an important Titanic. But this work and this book is not designed to answer that question. And this tonight is about this. And the many young people dying on our streets, the many adult people that are giving their lives to help interrupt that setup. The setup is critical. That somebody's get in the middle of that. But this work didn't have time to wait for the answer to that question. Yeah, Rod.
Gun violence, shooters, those. But as a part of the work in my city, Fresno, we in turn invite the fellows to those type of conversations, city council meetings, other organizations where they're trying to put more liquor stores in the neighborhoods where we're already oversaturated with liquor stores. We got one grocery store in Fresno, a Food Max, that charge us triple time the value of some rotten fruit that they get at a Save Mart on the north side of town. So my fellows, our fellows, yeah, because of the work and we involving them in these type of conversations, you only know what you know. So a lot of people don't know the information that you're trying to share. You got to get that information out there and then try to get people to get on board to help you with the work you're trying to do. Fortunately, now I know some of the information and I translate that to the same guys that we're working with, and I involve them in those city council meetings that we're coming in because they are our community. Like, I mean, I cuss a lot. I'm trying not to cuss, but we bleeding out literally like on bad food, and nobody coming to change that. Like, people in our communities are starving, which is why they go to gun violence. That's a great question, because if we had a good 2 or 3 grocery stores that serve good, healthy food, and we had healthcare and we had other stuff, maybe the crime violence ain't like it is. Maybe the violence ain't like it is, but people starving and they bleeding because of other things outside of what we trying to do. I know what I can help in, which is why I signed up with AP. But I also leverage that into community stuff that we also do about what can I do to help make life better for you? Like, if you're not getting health care, if you're not getting food, you're not eating right every night and day, which is part of what we do. I check on my guys 3 times a day. Hey, bro, did you eat this morning? That's part of what we do in AP that goes unmissed for a lot of people. They don't know all the things that we do. At lunch, if you eat, dinner, did you eat? We providing Uber Eats, foods and stuff for these people that might be robbing somebody because they didn't eat tonight. You know, so if your people in your community don't know what's going on, you gotta open that umbrella and share it and tell them so they can participate and be a bigger part of the cause. Because the guys I mess with, they want to help. You know, they tired of what they've been going through, tired of what they've been doing, because I did it. And I'm showing them. But if it's a purpose that's right for them, they're going to get behind you. But if they don't know, they can't help you. So you got to do a better job of letting them know what you want them to help you do. You know, I know what I signed up to do. I signed up to stop gun violence. When we started in Fresno, 2020, we had 74 homicides that year. Right now, today, we got 20. The city paid $2.5 million every time somebody get killed, 1.8 every time somebody gets shot. Shootings, we had 738. Now we less than 140. But the city not putting that money back in the programs that's helping bring them numbers down. Right. You know, they're spending that money somewhere else, and it ain't going to the grocery stores, it ain't going to the other stuff, so that's a whole nother issue that you gotta address, but you gotta know what you're trying to fight. I signed up to fight gun violence. We batting 1,000, but if they don't know the other issues, people get on board. Everybody want to eat. Everybody want health care. Everybody want food. Everybody want this, and that. Man, the administration don't want us to have that. They cut $831 million from programs like AP, nationwide. And shit, I can't speak for everybody, but I know what everybody going through because I be on calls with them. We had 15 staff, now we got 6. Maybe in February, we're only gonna have 2. Because we don't have the funding, although the numbers say we've been successful and we're doing what we signed up to do. So it's twofold, bro. And that's all I want to say.
And look, real quickly, because I want to address something else. What Rod said, he's making a living saving lives. Wait a minute. And we got to fight for him to make that living. And it shouldn't be ashamed about it. Anybody at the center of, on the ground floor of this interruption work in community violence intervention, and all of us have to navigate that issue of being paid as a result of violence. We have to turn it around in our mind's eye to ensure that we don't continue to allow ourselves to be taken advantage of by the systems that are clearly making a lot of money off of this violence. And to your point, not reinvesting when violence is reduced and not supporting the people doing the work on the ground. You can't imagine, or maybe you can, what that fight is like. To have folks believe that they should be doing this for free. No, there is no cost-free way out of this. Not now, maybe some point in life, and it won't happen in my lifetime. He has to get the resources he needs. It's a full-time, how many hours a week do y'all work? Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And let me just add quickly to that, and then some more questions. Institutions that you're talking about, these deeply ingrained institutions, change by people. What we're talking about is getting new people in front and in charge of those institutions, the fellows, folks like Rod, to change those institutions. Imperfect, deep, hundreds and hundreds a year embedded problems. We need to chip away at it. The second thing, which I learned from Sam, is that what the Peacemaker Fellowship and what we talk about in this book, and I can't wait to talk to you after you read it, is that the supports, the love, the mentorship, that walk with me kind of work that the NCAs do should never go away for any community. How do successful people be successful? They got mentors, they got access, they got networks. So to change the institutions, we need to ensure that folks in the advanced peace family continue to get those supports and get that those mentorship and those services, just like wealthy people and successful people who are keeping those institutions in place that you're talking about get all the supports to get there and to maintain the status quo. So that's why I think what the model we're talking about does get eventually to the policy and institutional work and change that you're referencing. And towards the end of the book, we speak to that.
Yes, thank you. Do you need me to use the...
Yeah, please.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Hi, everyone. Hi. Oh, cute. Hi. My name is Erin Carrison. I'm sorry, Mahasan. I'm faculty in the School of Social Welfare here at UC Berkeley. Proud Richmond resident, North and East. I have two questions, actually, given the remarks that you two offered earlier. The first is around building narratives for policymakers, legislators, right? Leveraging the data in that effort. I am always really concerned about like $1 million blocks, anything where we have literally assigned a value to a life, right? That's essentially, this is what it would cost, yada yada. Eugenics is a movement where, you know, the return on investment is big, right? So the idea of, hey, we save this money when we save this life, I don't know that everybody cares that it costs this much, you know, to deal with this injury or this fatality. And it may even, in fact, be the cost of doing business to erase Black men, right? And kidnap Black men. So I'm curious, when you present those numbers, might legislators be like, is that all it costs? Not such a big deal. You're right. Maybe they're not going to say that out loud, right, with the mic on. But I'm always concerned about that, right? Ruthie Gilmore says, "Where life is precious, life is precious." And so when we quantify a saved life, I'm always really afraid. The cynic in me is that someone's going to run with that and be like, "Yo, we can cover that cost," right? So that just makes me nervous. I'm curious. Do you think about that as you're literally attaching a monetary value to a life? I know why you're doing it, and I love why you're doing it. But I can see someone running with that in ways that are very sinister. And then my second is about a public health question. I'm working with some guys. The program is called Arms Down in San Quentin. It's about 6 folks who are leading a men's program, a group counseling, and they're looking at gun use as an addiction, right? And so we're talking about, what would that mean? Like, is the firearm like the pathogen, and who is patient zero, right? So if it's 30 folks who are sort of the kingpins, the ones who are really, you know, choreographing everything, if you're trying to figure out root causes, but we know that gun violence comes from market conditions that give rise to all kinds of tensions and scarcities and all of that, then how do you root out the public health issue, right? And like in a very granular way, in a way that data can operationalize, right? Because we understand all the complexities. So selfishly, I also want to bring this back to my guys when I go to SQ on Friday. But just really curious how you think of, if you do it all, gun violence as a disorder that's coming out of some sort of addiction, right? That when folks are like, I can't leave the house without my peace, like I don't know what to do without it. And they're talking about that as addiction. But also this notion of what a body is worth, what a life is worth, that number in the wrong hands, is that something that concerns you? So either of those questions, time permitting, I'd really appreciate answers to. Thank you.
Let me take the first question, because I think it goes back. What's your name, brother?
Cesar.
Cesar's very I don't get concerned about it because I don't think they care.
Wait, who doesn't care?
The policymakers.
About the number at all?
Oh, I don't think they care. Oh, I don't think they
I
care.
misunderstood you. I thought you were saying we give them those numbers.
Oh, we give them the numbers, and some care. But I don't think I think it's a creative minority that care. Right? I'm talking about the deeper in stuff in terms of, I mean, the fight to get this side of the aisle and this side of the aisle to care about this issue this way is a challenging fight, even with the numbers. So I'm communicating to you that even with the numbers, nobody's going, I can do something with that.
Oh, no, that's not what I mean. Let me just really quickly give this example then.
Okay.
Ford Pinto, instead of fixing what was wrong with the gas and ignition thing that would make the car blow up,
Yeah.
they did the actuarial analysis.
Yeah.
It's cheaper to pay out
Yeah.
wrongful death lawsuits
Yeah.
than to recall
Yeah.
that chip in the car.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm talking about, where it's like, that's just the cost of business that, like, you know, if it's gonna cost us this for civil suits against police officers,
Yeah.
right? That's expensive.
Yeah.
But they're like, happens every now and again.
Yeah.
Whatevs, and it's not even coming out of our pockets,
Yeah.
which is a whole other story.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Is maybe when we assign value, we're actually also green lighting some, like, not you, I want to say this better. I don't like assigning a dollar value to a life.
I hear you.
And I think it's extremely strategic and very important because I think we're worth everything.
Sure.
But there are many folks I think would see a number and be like, that's actually not that bad, considering what we get from it. If they're kidnapping, if
Yeah.
they're wiping out racial groups and this and that, which is my argument.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're doing that right now.
Yes.
So throwing a number out there ain't gonna change the dynamics.
Yes.
There will change the dynamics for folks who aren't paying any attention to this issue. Very few folks. But I've learned that there's so many people out there that don't even understand the struggle. Even in Richmond, they drive right by it. They're going to Point Richmond, they're going up to the Richmond Hills. They have no idea what's going on the flat. And so they give zero fucks about it. They don't care if it's twice that many. Folks who are being the sinisters, they've been sinisters for the last 300 years. And so yes, they're willing to pay more. They're willing to double it. They're willing to tear things like this down so that they can stay in status quo.
Let me-
This is it, because it's every time folks have come together to try to accomplish something, and this is what was kind of scary for me to even get into this work. And I knew getting into this work. I'm surprised I'm still alive. I ain't even gonna lie. And I was okay with that. But I knew folks were gonna attack this. And I went in just like a soldier should, knowing that I'm putting my life on the line for something that I believe in. Now, this brother walked up out of here because he was frustrated by his answers. I've been frustrated by so many answers because I ain't got a whole lot of answers. And everything he said is absolutely true. This system in this country absolutely sucks. Because ain't nobody standing up for the entire people. That's how you about to have a trillion. One man can take care of every problem in this country. That should never happen.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we're doing, there's no way in the world I'm gonna be able to solve the ills of the world. Like I ain't gonna be able to do it. But I'm that one starfish at a time.
I think it's beautiful. I want you to know I'm applauding
And then
you.
that person,
I'm scared of
that
people
one
who do
starfish.
that. Yeah.
But being scared of those people, like they already there. So
Well, what
no
am I
matter
not
what we
understanding then when you were saying we're building this database so we can tell policy makers and legislators? That's what I'm.
legislators that actually care.
Allies.
You know, and there's very few out there. And so hopefully we can slowly grab more and more. And as we're talking about this ecosystem in this community, and all those youngsters is carrying these guns because they don't want to get killed. And I've seen many folks lay dead on the ground with a pistol on their hip. It ain't gonna save you. If we can create an environment to where they don't feel like they need to carry a gun, to where they can focus on school, to where they can get an education, to where they can start getting into debate clubs and doing all these things. We can set up the next generation or the generation after that to be those exact policymakers that will care.
Yeah.
And they will care even more because they've come through this process. They know what's back there, and they can get in the truth. And we still will be attacked and attacked and attacked. Power is not given away, it's taken.
Thank you.
The games we literally have to play to keep our
Right.
people alive. I mean, so at the center of the answer to your question, it's a game.
Yeah.
It's a game that we have to play for funders, for those like-minded potential allies that are legislators. But at the end of the day, it's it's a negotiation, a game. And all sides of the aisle, progressive and conservatives, play the game the same way. It just depends on the day, how that game looks.
I'm very proud of you.
Thank you.
So yeah, before I turn it over to Dad, just to respond, I mean, part of the data, the numbers, I agree with you, but we would never want to put a dollar value on human life. But part of this is the game, the strategy of building a broader movement, reaching out to people who'd say, I don't really care about that issue. Now maybe I do. Oh, it's costing me more money in my local taxes or in whatever. That's part of it. Whether we're winning or not we have a story in this book about Fresno. Maybe Rod could tell it better than I can. We were all presenting to the Fresno City Council about funding for advanced peace. They said, no, we don't want to fund this stuff. We don't trust those guys, etc. So we brought some data, said, oh, they, interrupted these many conflicts that saved these many lives, this many, and then, was Dyer the police chief at the time or the mayor at the time? I can't remember. Both. He this guy was like whatever, the Trump of Fresno, and he was running things, and he's still, he's the king of Fresno. Admittedly racist police chief, becomes mayor, etc. So we had him in a public meeting on TV, showed him the data, and he had to admit, and it made the press the front page, hey, I actually believe, I know advanced peace outreach workers have stopped shootings. They have interrupted conflicts. That changed the game. That changed the conversation about, should we support? Does this work? Does this really work? Do we believe that this really works? So it's not the only thing, but we try to use the data and the evidence, the numbers as a way to change part of the conversation. It's imperfect.
Just for clarity, real quick before we get to that. It's not a number on the life. You can't take the value of the life from the person. I lost a son to gun violence. I lost a mom to gun violence. So I'm overly invested in it. You can't put a number on it. The number I spoke of is what it costs the city to deal with a homicide in the city of Fresno, to deal with a shooting of Fresno, not a specific dollar value.
Oh, sure.
That's why.
Sure. No,
Just
I
so
want to
we
be clear.
clear,
I'm
it's
with
not like
you.
everybody
I'm
that
with
get killed is worth $2.5 million.
No, but it can be read like that.
That's how much it costs the city to get delivered. But Sam Martin Luther King, how much value does that cost my community if I'm dead? And I'm not even pushing a nonviolent thing. Bigger than that. Yeah, so.
I think we're more aligned than not. That's okay.
You're right.
Yeah,
I
I'm
was-
like, it became
I was
bigger
just
than
saying
it
that, I
needed
was
to be.
just saying for Fresno stats as far as what it costs per shooting, per
I think it's
homicide.
interesting what you
Go
just
ahead.
said, Mayor.
Does everybody agree that this is a big issue?
Yeah.
Does everybody understand the cultural norms that stand in the way of changing this?
Yes.
See, that's the problem. Our cultural norms are so bad when it comes to violence. And if you look at our history, as Sam was saying, how many years have we been doing this? When you can put people in prison because it makes money, and Jerry Brown did it, Gavin did it. I mean, these for-profit prisons have to have so many bodies in there in order for them to work. So part of what we have to do is to get people to understand that our cultural norms are really jacked up and DeVone would say fucked up. Anyway, I just wanted to make the emphasis because if you look at England, if you look at France, if you look at the United States, you look at Germany, you look at most of the countries that consider themselves civil, their gun violence is far less than ours.
Gun ownership is fun.
Far less. So part of it, I believe those cultural norms that we just,
Yeah.
and it's
So I'm
hard.
curious about patient zero. Who started it? Who started the spread kind of thing? So people
Patient
talk about
zero?
it.
Christopher Columbus.
Yeah.
And who carried on? Ringo, Johnny Ringo. Wild Bill Hickok. All those people.
Yeah, another question here.
First of all, I'm gonna give people some hope here, okay?
Talk to their mic so we can-
I'm a retired parole officer from the California Youth Authority. I did it for 30 years. I grew up here in Berkeley, and I raised my son in East Oakland, who is now a vice president of Wells Fargo Bank. A lot of his friends would come to my house, and he also did a little rap, and he said, my mom don't like my friends because they smell like weed. And I would say to him, if a cop stops them, he's not going to look and say, you're different than them. So my thing is this. I had an 80% success rate on my caseload, okay? I started with the families. That's something that starts with young kids. Right now I'm working in the Berkeley school system, and I see 5- and 6-year-olds telling teachers to shut up, having things go wrong with them. When I read the reports when they came to me on probation, this is after parole. Parole is a county, probation is a county, parole is a state. So we need people who work and know in our communities. What you guys are doing is success because you're working the communities. And that's what I did. My clients asked me if I even knew how to go home because I would go out on Saturdays and Sundays without getting paid for it because this was my community. It was my son I was going to have to worry about out there in East Oakland, okay? My niece was murdered. So I had a commitment, not for the paycheck, not for the legislator's sake. In fact, I did some things that could have got me fired saving some clients. Because I didn't look at, oh my God, he smoked a joint and I got a dirty drug test. I would tell him, tell me that you smoke weed. Because if I take this test and it goes to my supervisor first, you go back. I have no choice. But I had guys who were working jobs, who had worked hard, go out on a party one Saturday, smoke a joint. They didn't deserve to go back into the institution. This is how I cheated the institution, okay? They come and talk to me. It got so hard for me because people begin to transfer their kids to my caseload, okay? I was one person. I was awarded Parole Agent of the Year when I retired. I'm 76 years old right now, okay? And I'm not saying it for that, but I'm giving you hope. One person, one organization. We can't change 100% of it overnight, but if we do it one step at a time. I don't know what's going on with parole and probation anymore. They got rid of the youth authority and put the kids back into the adult system. That's legislation. I was telling her today, I made a change because I would get clients being released, okay, with 3 months before school is out. They're 17 years old. The law required them to go to school. I'd go to SAR board meetings and they say, well, they're not going to get no credit. They can't get no credit. Anger. A lot of anger. Why am I having to go to school? And I say, because you're on parole right now, this is what they're requiring. But let's start focusing on where you're going to go from here when these 3 months are up. And that's like what you guys are saying. Something needs to happen in the system. That's true, what he was saying. Yes, it's going to always be a money-making system. It was set up to be a money-making system. But it doesn't mean we can't save as many of our kids as we can. And we need to get into the schools in elementary school right now with some of these kids before they get to the point where Big Brother is selling guns. That's the other thing I wanted to say. I worked in Pittsburgh. They gave me from the Caldecott Tunnel to the Stockton border by myself. Okay, it was called a resident agent. I went into the police departments. I let them know who I was. I let them know what I was doing. And I rarely had to use them or have them come out there with me. One person can make a big difference. In the 30 years I was in a parole agent, think about this, an 80% success rate. I can't count how many lives I changed. But I know that most of my caseload did not go back into that system because we can make a difference, but we have to start with the families. In Pittsburgh, I had a family, we're 4th generation drug dealers, okay? How you gonna deal when the grandmama, the mama, the daddy, all of them, you have to start focusing on those kids young, and then you have to go after the families too. And let them know, what do you want with your kid? Because you're not going to be there 24 hours a day to work with them. But they have to have alternatives. And the last thing I'm going to say is one of those guys that I didn't lock up for having a dirty drug test, and I let him get off of parole. I was working in Berkeley schools a few years ago, and a guy walked up to me. He had his collar like this. And I'm gonna be honest with you. I know I'm not supposed to in the school, but I tell these kids, I'm an old school black grandma. I would take your butt behind this building and whip it. And who do you think they're gonna believe? You a little bad kid or me an ex-cop? You see? And that's taken, I know school would be going, oh. And so this guy comes walking up with his jacket like this to me, and I was like, oh, because I could tell the look in his eye. And I said, whose kid did I mess with today, you know? And he said, you remember me? And I was like, no, I've been off for parole for 15 years at this point. He said, you remember the guy that you told who had a dirty drug trust and you got a chance? It wasn't free. They had to go get a program in the community and one that I can go check on. He went and got a program in his church because triple AA, whatever it is, don't let us come in and know stuff. He said, remember the guy you got? And I went and got into a program in the community. I said, yeah. And he opened up his shirt and he had a collar on. He said, I'm the youth minister at this church. That's what we can do. So I'm just saying that to give you some hope that what they're doing, what they're talking about, we can do it. We have to deal with legislators. They wouldn't give us a lot of money. In fact, they closed the Oakland parole office. We were the first one, predominantly black office, that they closed. But most of us, like me, even way out there in Pittsburgh, we went out there and I kept on doing what I was doing, which is to save my community that I grew up in, that my son was going to have to grow up in and not get shot at.
You know, one huge note from all the amazing things that sister just laid down is the answers exist in these very impacted communities. There are so many resources and assets in terms of human assets, human resources that often go untapped that can help us change trajectories. Can you imagine what it was like in 2007 when we proposed to hire as violence interrupters, or what we call neighborhood change agents, formerly incarcerated individuals with gun charges in their backgrounds to come inside of city government as city government employees, receive compensation, pensions. The outcry initially was, are you crazy? Are you crazy? You're just going to create a revolving door of criminality inside city government. Now, they said this in the face of our police department having charges against it several times over that could have paid for our department 4 or 5 times over, right? So criminality was already there in city government. But we were able to identify folks from the very communities impacted by gun violence who brought a skill set, a commitment, character, and integrity, and a credibility to the very people we had to engage intimately and intensively to facilitate this work. And it changed the game. And I remember being told that by a longtime city employee, this too shall pass, meaning this is going to be here 5 minutes before they change and do something differently. 1. 2, told that they're never going to allow formerly incarcerated individuals who have gun charges in their backgrounds, who are from the city of Richmond, California, to come into this government as city employees. And 17 years later, it is still happening. And not just in Richmond, but in several cities around the country. So to your point, one step at a time, one belief at a time, and one commitment at a time, we can slowly but surely pick away at this. But more importantly, we can reduce significant gun violence in the near term. And that's what this work was all about, a practical approach to stop the bleeding now.
Well, I just want to thank everybody for coming out. We're going to stick around here to talk more about this. Appreciate everybody. Hopefully you have more questions, more comments. Most importantly, don't leave without one of these. And we'll catch up with you soon. Thank you again for coming out.
Chapter 4. Now, I don't want Jason to slap me for this, but I tell folks all the time, start with chapter 4. Read the whole thing, but start with chapter 4. An anti-racist approach to ending gun violence. That's the title of that chapter. Because it speaks to the shoulders that we stand on with regard to the application of this work. It speaks to heroes of the past, and it certainly it walks us to where we are today in the work. So want to encourage you, yes, to purchase the book, but dive into chapter 4. I think it is our thesis statement. I really believe that's where the thesis statement landed in chapter 4. Thank you for being here.